If you've seen Limitless, the movie with Bradley Cooper, it was sort of patterned roughly off. This is something where you take it and you're like, well, I feel more like myself than I have in a long time, and my ability to focus, you feel limitless. Starting in my mid-20s, I said, my brain isn't working the way it's supposed to. I started forgetting things. I was having problems that I didn't like, and my career was just taking off. So I said, what can I do to hack this? I ordered my first big package of smart drugs, and these are mostly pharmaceuticals. They came in, I was all excited, and I took the first of the bunch I was testing out on myself. It was called Aniracetam, and I use an analog of that even today, and I read about that in Game Changers. But the experience was really weird. I took it for a week, and I'm like, damn, I was so excited. I'm so disappointed, this stuff doesn't work. So I stopped taking it. And the next day I said, you know, I'm grasping for words. And I realized the previous week, every time I wanted to think of a word, it would just come to me. And then I found that I'd say, what's the word for that? What was I gonna say? And I realized I wasn't having that. What good nootropics do, the ones that aren't energizing, which is a different effect that's also helpful, they make you feel more like yourself. They reduce the struggle and the work it takes to do something. So it would have been within your skill set, but a struggle or a stretch, like, oh, I got that. Sort of like if you could, lift a 35-pound dumbbell, but it's work, and all of a sudden you'll be like, oh yeah, I got that. Maybe I could do 45. So it's this performance enhancer, but it feels so natural, it feels like yourself, that after a very short period of time, you get used to having that superpower, and it just becomes your new normal. And it turns out there's a whole bunch of different racetam family drugs. Racetam's been around for almost 60 years. It's made by Sandoz Pharmaceuticals, a big pharmaceutical company in Europe. It's protective of your neurons. It increases oxygen, but not blood flow in the brain. And we're not sure all the ways that it works, but it's got a long safety history. The downsides are it may use more acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter. You can eat raw egg yolks or take soy lecithin, or some of the supplements that I make have things that increase acetylcholine in it, and it's widely available at Whole Foods or anywhere.
Would you have to eat raw egg yolks to get it?
If they're lightly cooked, it's okay, but if you burn your egg yolks, you're not really going to get functional choline. It'll be burned. It's damaged by heat. So you go through that. It's like that might be one side effect. The other side effect, it amplifies caffeine. So you take one of these things, hold on, your brain works better. It protects your neurons in low oxygen environments, increases oxygen in the brain, and things work better. Like, I think I like this. And what I switched to, and in Game Changers I kind of give the dosage and all this, is one called Aniracetam. And Aniracetam is lower stress. It also is the only one that increases memory I/O, or input-output. And I'm a computer science guy. I was a computer hacker by training when I weighed 300 pounds. And if you can increase the speed that you put something into a computer's memory or you get it out, it radically changes the performance of the whole computer. So faster memory means something. Well, as a human being, if you can find a substance that increases your ability to get things in and out of your memory, when you meditate, you're going to remember how to meditate better. When you study, you're going to remember what you do better. When you want to recall what you did, you're going to do it better. I've been on that stuff for 20 years, and it's really impactful.
Wow.
There's also these things that if you increase energy in the brain, you increase performance everywhere. And that's been a big focus. My book before Game Changers was called Headstrong, all about if you increase function of energy producing cells called mitochondria in the brain, what's it going to do? And it turns out your emotions get better, your ability to regulate your emotions, your ability to recall things, your ability to just have raw power to be you, it goes up. Some nootropics, and a lot of the ones that I focus my formulations on, are around increasing energy throughout the body, but most especially in the brain. And then others are around manipulating or modifying things. Another nootropic that's really powerful is something that comes from green coffee fruit. Not the coffee beans themselves, but actually the fruit itself. And we produce it, it's called Neuromaster. There's a compound in the brain called BDNF, brain-derived nootropic factor. And this is nootropic factor, we're talking about nootropics, this is stuff that lets the brain be more plastic, more like a young brain. And it's tied to something called nerve growth factor. And if you can find a way to raise those things, your brain will act like a young person's brain, it'll learn faster. So the number one thing that we know that's free that raises both of those is exercise. High intensity interval training, lifting heavy things, stuff that you've talked about before on the show, right? But this compound in Neuromaster raises your BDNF levels 4 times more than exercise. So I'm like, I think I'll exercise and I'll take that stuff. So I want that young plastic brain. And after 20 years of trying pretty much every nootropic out there, I've settled in on what works for my brain. But my advice for you as you go down that path, and for everyone watching or listening, is your brain is not the same as your spouse, your friend, even your parents, although it's more likely to be like your parents. So the stack that works for me may not be the stack for you. And this is why when you see companies who have like 15 different racetams and all this stuff in there, don't start there. Because one of those may have a negative effect on you, and one may have a very positive effect. So try those individually. Most of the time with supplements, try all the ones that might work and see if you get the results you want, then pull them out. I found that with nootropics, it doesn't work that way for the pharmaceuticals. With the plant-based ones, it usually does. And I make something called Smart Mode, which is a set of very well-studied plant-based compounds for cognitive enhancement. Kind of a different universe than the pharmaceutical side. And it's funny because another nootropic that's controversial, and it's in Game Changers, is microdosing of LSD. Yes. I interviewed 500 plus people, Nobel Prize winners, all these people, and I said, not what does one person do? I asked them all the same structured question, but what do they all have in common? Like, what are the rules they follow to become game changers? Not all of them microdose LSD. In fact, very few of them do. But the 3 big buckets that came out of all this research over several years was they do things to be smarter, faster, and happier. So happiness doesn't come from wealth, but wealth can come from happiness. But being angry and tired and unhappy all the time is not a good way to become successful or to change the game in your field, or frankly, to become wealthy or powerful or whatever else important. I also got from the data, not one person who's been a game changer named, when I asked 3 most important things in the world for people who want to perform better, not one said wealth, power, or fame. They're not seeking that. That is not the target. It is a side effect of them doing what they're here to do. And I had this dinner in New York. It was profound. My friend Andrew hosted this, and he has this long table, 25 people, and there's hedge fund managers, like big people in New York. And it was a Jeffersonian dialogue. And what that means is that instead of just having a random dinner conversation, one person asks a question at the table, and then we discuss it, only one person at a time. So we're all listening and focused. It was really cool. I've never done that before. And when it got to be my turn to ask a question, I said, all right, how many people here have used hallucinogens or psychedelics for personal development? Every single hand at the table went up.
Wow.
And I'm talking 20-year-old artists to 70-year-old senior executive people. They'd all done it at least once. Get outside your head doesn't mean you go do drugs. In fact, if you're under 25, I would say don't go do drugs because your brain's not done cooking. Don't go, to some random party, even Burning Man. Do it with a trained professional in a place where it's legal. And I talk about, you can actually go to a place in Costa Rica that has a medically licensed ayahuasca setting. I did ayahuasca in Peru 20 years ago with a shaman in the jungle, which was a transformative experience for me. But just to go out there and say, hey, I got some, I'm gonna go to Disneyland, that is not good for your soul. It is not good for your performance. It's not cognitive enhancing. But having the ability to look in and see what your mistakes are, you can do this with holotropic breathing, which is a type of breathing that was developed to replace LSD for psychotherapy in the early 70s.
I saw it in the book. Go into detail about that.
Oh, I love this. So Tom, in addition to this, losing 100 pounds, getting control of my biology, and having a successful career, making my brain work better, when all the stuff that was supposed to work didn't work, I said, I'm gonna go outside the box. I'm an engineer, so I'm gonna try meditation. I said, I'm going to do a personal development thing. And I was at a point in my life, I was ending a relationship, and a friend said, Dave, you have to go do this. And I said, what is it? She said, I'm not gonna tell you. So what? She said, you won't do it if I tell you. So just trust me. All right, fine. I didn't know what else to do. I was feeling kind of desperate. So I went to this personal development retreat, and a part of this was you'd lay down on a mat with a facilitator sort of watching over you. There's a bunch of other people in the room doing the same thing, and they play like movie soundtrack music, and you do this really deep, rapid breathing. And the technical term for what you do is called tripping balls. You're like, what is going on here? And literally...
Is it because you're essentially hyperventilating?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're hypoxic. I've done this with Stan Grof, the guy who invented it. He's the guy who created the field of transpersonal psychology. In the 60s in Czechoslovakia, when it was still one country, He had from Sandoz Pharmaceuticals, the same company that makes Aniracetam, he had a shipment of LSD when it was first invented. And he, as a licensed psychiatrist, treated 3,000 patients with LSD. And he noticed that they were all getting better, and he was frustrated that the Freudian stuff wasn't working. So they all get better, but there's patterns about how you come into the world. There's patterns where people get stuck, and he could help them work through it using this.